gathered here in the city of Port Arthur and to this portion segment of the subcommittee on energy, climate, and grid security. At this field hearing, as it stated, I am Thurman Bill Vorty, mayor of the greatest city in the state of Texas, which happens to be Port Arthur, Texas, and you are situated in that city as I speak. Now, to the Honorable Chair and to the members of this committee, I begin this dialogue with a commendable thank you for allowing indulgence from the municipal government, which has jurisdiction where this affected facility is situated. Now, I in no way am here to bash or discredit the Biden-Harris administration on its position on the matter of permitting. However, I do appeal to the said administration to reconsider and subsequently abandon its present course of discontinuance or disallowing the permitting process to go forward. The city of Port Arthur is home to several petrochemical facilities, and we proudly embrace the fact of having the largest of such facilities in North America, and here we even say in the entire world. With such industrial neighbors come the necessity of relational interactions with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, it's known as TCEQ, and even the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. These agencies are trusted within our community to be sure that the air quality we all breathe is not contaminated and able to sustain life. Now, in the past, we have relied on collaborations with these agencies to support the economic stability of our community and the physical health of the citizens who call Port Arthur, Texas, home. As I ponder the significance of this hearing on today with relations to the future economic impact of the LNG industry on our city and in our city, I beg for compromise of the positions of all who are actually authorities in the process at hand. As aforementioned with the petrochemical industry, the LNG industry is alive and well within the jurisdictional confines of the municipal governance of which I represent. The rush to green concept, as it is being applied to this said LNG supplier, will have a negative impact on the economic growth and stability of the city of Port Arthur. The jobs Port Arthurans have during this construction phase will be compromised negatively if the permitting is continued to be disallowed. The economic impact of businesses supplying materials and goods during this operation will harm families' abilities to continue with specific qualities of life. The negative impact will then spread to the region and ill affect thousands of workers and their families. Committee, I implore you to seek an amicable resolve to the present positions by agencies which have authority to bring about the compromise needed to continue the economic growth for our fair city and to provide a living, sustaining, environmentally friendly coexistence of the industrial neighbors with the residents of the city of Port Arthur, Texas. Jobs and the creation of opportunities for families to thrive is the lifeblood of any community. Port Arthur, like any other community, has an obligation to offer to its citizens. This opportunity is made with real supporting opportunities to this institute by these entities, brother, and bring about possibility for a better quality of life. Every citizen of Port Arthur does not want the LNG to be non-existent. However, I got 2 more seconds. Non-existent. However, we want this facility to comply with federal and state authorities on emissions and regulated occurrences at the facility. Doing so, the possibilities of economic stability for the citizens increase. So let us be the community who stands for environmental wellness and economic stability and growth. And now I yield.
Gentleman's time to expire. I gave you a little lenience there because you are an elected official as well, and you speak for a constituency. Thanks for your words. Dr. Reynard, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Well, presently, the LNG has been ill-affected with the permitting process. The jobs are construction type jobs that are there as far as I've been apprised. And these jobs now in Port Arthur, we don't have every citizen with the proper skill level of each craft that's needed out there. But there are some Port Arthurians who have the skill level, and there are some Port Arthurians who are actually working in the facility now. Now, for future jobs, once completion of the facility has actually gone in force, we would have permanent jobs that hopefully citizens in Port Arthur would qualify for those jobs as well. So the economic impact from a facility such as the one that's in particular right now would be a positive economic shot in the arm, so to speak, for the city of Port Arthur. Now, the other LNGs that are there operating now, there are jobs there, and some craft jobs, operator type jobs, engineering type jobs, mechanical jobs, welders, carpenters, and even other type of laborers. Those jobs in those facilities are actually jobs that Port Arthurians have. Now, we don't have, and I don't have at my disposal, an actual, factor as far as the data on the number of individuals who are employed there.
I'll stop you right there and move on. My time's going to expire. 500 jobs out at 70 Pass, Buccaneer, 500 Zachary contract jobs. That's 1,000 employees. That's 3 shifts, 12-hour shifts. That's a lot of employment. That's just one facility. That's not counting all the other facilities. Future construction jobs for building out facilities. When I think about energy, I think about 4 key words: production, delivery, utilization, and export. Produce the American resources here that we are blessed with. Transmit or deliver those resources through pipelines to facilities like this, but also to utilities that can provide the power that we take for granted in this country, or the refineries that we saw on the energy corridor to refine that product into useful components that make our lives better. And then export to help our friends and allies around the globe lower their carbon emissions and meet their energy needs, especially at critical times when we're facing uncertainty like Ukraine. Let me ask you this: are you concerned that the uncertainty created by this LNG export ban and overall campaign against oil and gas threatens these jobs and economic development opportunities in this community?
Yes, it probably would, because then it would ill affect the ability of that producer of those type goods to be shipped or exported to customers and prospective customers that they actually have on board now. There are some contractual agreements for the future of these facilities and how they would export this product to those other countries.
Those future contracts are in jeopardy if these new permits are are paused by this administration as they have been. My time's expired. I'll now recognize the ranking member, the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Fletcher, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chairman Duncan. And I want to thank all of our witnesses today for your testimony. I found it very helpful to hear from you and, of course, to read your full testimony that you submitted before the hearing. And I really think, as I mentioned in my opening statement, that this pause gives us an important opportunity to think about community engagement. And that's something where I think there really have been demonstrated opportunities for improvement, both in assessing the pause, and certainly that's our purpose here today. And so, Mr. Beard, I was hoping that you could talk to us a little bit about how the existing LNG facilities that are currently operating in Port Arthur and those that are in the construction process have engaged with concerned community members prior to and during the construction and operations, and then maybe if you could share with us your thoughts on how folks involved in those entities could do a better job of engaging constructively with members of the community to understand the concerns and the issues and try to find that common ground that you were mentioning.
Thank you, Ranking Member. First of all, I think all of those companies do try their best as far as they know to publicly engage with the community and talk to community members. But it's more of a function of doing the usual thing, going to the Chamber of Commerce, going to other groups and organizations. But they have to do what we say is to go into the bushes and to the weeds, where people really are. Go into the neighborhoods, work with community organizations and the others, because one thing that we do know is that Port Arthur's chronically high unemployment is not being affected, despite all the number of jobs you mentioned, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
We are not lowering unemployment here, we haven't for decades. So what's happening? If they're engaging, then why aren't people being hired? The mayor mentions the fact about training, but we don't have a shortage of trained people. I've got names of 25 people that are on this phone right here, and their resumes have education all the way from 2-year associates to master's degrees. But they cannot get an interview or even get a chance to test. Well, how can they be hired? And how also can they be hired when the contractors that come in to this city bring their workforce with them? We have this knowledge of people who left Port Arthur to come back and get a job, but they will work with another company when that job is over. Hey, why don't you come with us? We're going to be moving to that big project in Port Arthur. So that displaces our workforce. There's not nearly enough being done, because if it were, unemployment figures would change.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. I think that's very helpful for all of us to take back. I think we're going to get a chance to ask more questions. So I want to turn quickly my next question, the time I have left, to Mayor Barti, because in your testimony you talked about opportunities that are created from these positions, and as we've just heard, maybe more of them could be coming to the citizens of Port Arthur. Do you think that, could you talk a little bit about opportunities to bring these facilities and those who are sort of bringing this development, how the city could work with them, with the operators, to improve and mitigate some of the issues that Mr. Beard has talked about?
Yeah, on the job opportunities, I'm going to be correct on what you would like for an answer. There are what we call IDAs that are actually in place with facilities, with industrial facilities. And there are certain numbers of Port Arthurans that are actually asked, or the IDA stipulates a certain percentage of Port Arthurans to be employed during a certain a specific period of time. If they are not according to the IDAs, then there is a penalty fee that particular industrial employer would actually pay to the city for not fulfilling that particular tenant or article in that agreement. Now, futuristically, with the LNGs and with this one LNG in particular, whenever I came in office in 2019, they were beginning the process. The others were already there, and I visited with them, but those agreements were already in place and functioning. We are hoping that with the present facility that is being constructed, and the future of, I think it's the train number 2, I think that's the proper name for it, that we would have a greater number of citizens prepared, even working with Lamar State College, Port Arthur, to help provide citizens with the crafts necessary so that the citizens of Port Arthur would be attractive for employment in these facilities. And again, as I said, if they are not employing Port Arthurans as the agreement says, then there is a penalty that the company is assessed.
Thank you. I have exceeded my time, so Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back for this
Nobody
round.
yields back. I'll now go to Mr. Griffin from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bernard, for having us at your facility. I appreciate that. And my question to you starts off with looking at workforce development, workforce training. We heard Mr. Beard say that there's a lot of unemployment and that people have degrees. Do you find that they have the right degrees? Have they gotten the right degrees and you're trying to get them educated in the areas where you anticipate the jobs are going to be tomorrow and today?
So students select, of course, their own degrees and their own career path. They do receive a lot of career counseling on our campus to let them know what some of the opportunities are in this area in terms of employment. So yes, they do receive guidance and counseling in that. We do have a fairly large educational program that services primarily the petrochemical and the LNG facilities. Right now we have about 200 majors in those areas. We also we have a fairly large non-credit training program. So we have contracted, for example, with Bechtel, who is the contractor for the Port Arthur LNG to train workforce. So we've done some CDL training for them. We're doing some craft training for them. We've also partnered, or they have also partnered with Nederland High School to start a welding program to make sure that there are opportunities for individuals that participate in those.
And I'm gonna stop you there because I don't know about this part of the country, but in my part of the country, welding jobs pay pretty good money. Is that true of you too?
Yes, sir. Certainly do.
Yeah. Mr. Kelly, one of the things I found in the coal industry, and of course we've lost a lot of our coal in Central Appalachia, which I represent part of, Virginia part of that. But one of the things we found is it's not just the immediate area that benefits from investment. That I mean, 2.5 hours away, you find companies that have invested because they're building machinery or equipment, or they're doing maintenance on equipment that's used in the coal mines. Is that also true at your LNG facilities?
Congressman, thank you very much for the question. And we do find, and prior to working in the port, I was involved in the petrochemical industry as a contractor, a service provider too, and we certainly see spillover effects. And just like if you would follow the path of an economic impact analysis, you have the direct and the indirect, and you have the induced jobs. And we find that that happens in our area. We'd certainly like to see more of that. As a port, some of my testimony I touched on project cargo, and that implies that some of the cargo came from abroad, highly specialized, and brought in here. But we also handle project cargo going export, which means it's derived here locally. And that too has a spillover effect in providing other job opportunities.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I mean, one of the problems that I've had is that and one of the problems I have with the pause, and I agree that it's a pause, and people get excited and they call it a ban and they put it in the title of a hearing and so forth, but you know, it's not a ban on already existing, but the pause itself has negative effects as you testified to. Here's the problem I have. They told us the same thing that they're telling y'all now, is we'll take a pause, or we don't need this, and there will be other jobs available. And what my people have discovered, in my district, Dr. Bernard, is similar in economics. I couldn't find exact per capita numbers to match up with yours, but my household income in my district is just over 50,000. That's household income. And we're 409th out of the 435 congressional districts. So it's an economically stressed area as well. What we found is they said you can find other jobs when they got rid of our steam coal. Our met coal's doing fine. But our steam coal jobs, Well, there are some other jobs, but the job at the Dollar General just doesn't pay as much as the job in the coal mine at over $100,000 a year pay. Is that the same thing you find with petrochemicals and LNG?
I think if you look back at Port Arthur's history, and I made mention of our reinvention of ourselves, we've been through periods where there was a massive loss of jobs in facilities that reinvented themselves, and you found that there was a movement towards the service sector jobs, and you're correct, they do not pay the same as the core employer and the job producer that I mentioned had 120-year history. And my friend here and my father and both my grandfathers all worked for that same refinery, that they were able to provide that sustainability for the family, and that the core business obviously probably pays higher wages and better benefits. Yes, sir.
All right, I appreciate that. With that, my time is up on this round, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. I'll now go to Mr. Weber from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Renard, I want to come to you. And as we know, you all did a great job here with the college. The LNG companies have worked with Lamar State College. Have there been scholarships involved?
Absolutely. There has been some significant scholarships that each of the LNG plants and petrochemical industries award each year. And in addition to that, we just accepted a big donation of some equipment last week from one of the local companies. So yes, I would say they're very supportive.
Absolutely, we love hearing that. And in your remark, excuse me, your testimony, you said that those interns at facilities can make about $16 an hour. And then you said they have the ability, once they graduate and get out, to make anywhere from $64,000 to $109,000. Did I misquote that?
You did not. That is from the U.S. Bureau of Statistics.
Okay, so those are pretty good jobs.
Yes.
I'm going to go to a little bit different point in discussion. A pause, as we've been talking about it, or as the administration is calling it, has consequences. So let me go through these and see if I can get y'all's agreement. Is it true or false that a pause means no income for construction workers? Is that true?
I would say that's true.
If they put it on pause? Mayor? A pause means no income for construction workers when that job is stopped.
No, because it doesn't affect that. A
Mr.
pause.
You're saying it doesn't, Larry?
As my testimony indicated, it provides financial risk, and delayed projects could be a dead project.
Sure.
So those jobs would not be created.
So let me go step two, back to the college. A pause in that instance, where phase two is stopped, because of the uncertainty, they don't know if they're gonna be able, how long the pause is gonna last, whether the investors are gonna have their money there. If a pause goes on, doesn't it conceivably mean, Dr. Renard, that those same students, after all they've had training, that they've gotten scholarships, they very well may not have a job when they graduate? Is that possible?
That is possible.
Thank you. And then I want to do this. As Mr. Kelly said, a pause means less exports from our waterways. Is that true or false?
Yes, sir. Very true.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'll go back to the mayor, same question, because we talked about money for vendors, money for contractors, money for students if they get jobs. So a pause means less revenue to the city.
It would, however, now, the pause that I think have been questioning right now hasn't become totally effective. It's not in effect, because I think the pause is for phase two, and not, it doesn't involve the current work that's going on. But however, the students that we are educating now in the next 24 months, if this doesn't change, then it will have an ill effect, and a negative impact would be upon us.
Well, it does have a pause on those who are looking at investing their money in the market, if you will. And let me give you some factoids about, there may be some disagreement over whether President Biden has a war on energy. But let me say this about the Keystone Pipeline. It was under President Obama in 2008, when I was in the Texas House when he came into office. Here's some factoids about the Keystone Pipeline. And as we know, it would come right here into our area. It carries 830,000 barrels of oil a day. We care about the environment also, just like our friends across the aisle, like all of y'all do. We do care about the environment, because believe it or not, I've got 3 kids, 8 grandkids, and even a great-granddaughter, okay? It's true, Larry, I'm old, okay? So the Keystone Pipeline carries 830,000 barrels of product a day. If you took an 18-wheeler that carries around 7,000 gallons and you divided it by a 42 or 50-gallon barrel, that's 140 barrels on an 18-wheeler. Stick with me here. If you divided 140 barrels on an 18-wheeler, 140 barrels of oil, 7,000 gallons of oil, into 830,000 barrels a day, okay, that the pipeline would have brought down to us to continue the refining and continue the jobs and grow our availability to do just that, it would take, on a daily basis, 5,253 18-wheelers a day to move that kind of product. We care about emissions, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We have time. We've come all this way, and I know members want to engage in another round of questioning, so we're going to do that. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. I'm from South Carolina. We're not an energy state other than nuclear power. But I've traveled down to Louisiana and Texas enough to know the impact of energy jobs and energy companies on the local community. Give an example. I traveled from Lafayette down to Fort Fourchon in Louisiana. 4-lane highway, business after 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 business on both sides of the highway support what happens offshore. Those are good paying jobs. The impact of those companies, those businesses, and their employees on the local community. Joining the YMCA, the Chamber of Commerce, and going to local churches and touting and eating in local restaurants and tipping the waitresses. Economic impact of energy jobs and energy sector is huge on a community. And I know you know that, Mayor Bartee. But I want to direct my line of questioning to Dr. Raynard. We know that U.S. LNG creates good paying jobs that lift communities and individuals out of poverty and betters their quality of life. I just mentioned some of the things where it supports the community. I'm a big supporter of technical colleges. I'm a big supporter of small community college and large 4-year universities. You mentioned that students of Lamar State College generally are socioeconomically disadvantaged, academically underprepared, first-generation students or members of an at-risk ethnic group. How critical is the role of LNG and energy industry in general and the college in creating opportunities for those economically disadvantaged or often?
So for another word, jobs. That is the goal of a big number of our students that enroll at Lamar State College, Port Arthur. Many of them have a specific goal in mind in terms of what they want to do, a new country they want to work for. And with the increase in LNG facilities in the region, and specifically with the Port Arthur LNG facility under construction, they are interested in working in those facilities. And so for our community and for our students that we serve, having those jobs available so that students can graduate and go to work and support their families and the community at large is critical. It's very important.
Thank you for the work that you do there to prepare the young minds for the jobs that should be available and will be available in the future if we have our way. Mr. Kelly, we have the Port of Charleston, and we deepened that port 45 feet, hope to go to 50 for the big container ships. What are the prospects of growth for the Port of Arthur?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And having visited the Port of Charleston, my compliments on their efforts of navigating through the permitting process with Army Corps to see that. We have a deepening project here on our waterway to take us from 40 to 48 feet. And thanks to local leadership of supporting this, we're in year 22 of 23. No spring back. We're in year 22 of 23 of that project when they've started the deepening process, and it should take a few more years to get there. So obviously that huge benefit to the movement of tonnage on our waterway. That's certainly growth. The port itself, we're under a $250 million capital expansion plan adding to it. We do handle liquid products. We have, as I mentioned in the testimony, dry bulk and break bulk. And we handle a lot of the products other than just energy. So I think our future is bright on there. I'm often asked about containers, and Charleston is an emerging large container port, and there's a lot of opportunity there. We have some bridge interferences here on our waterway, and we have our neighbors over in Houston that do an outstanding job of handling massive amounts of containers.
Let me just follow up. How does LNG export industry play into your projected growth and strategy?
Yes, sir. For as the port area of the region, most of these facilities we're talking about are actually at the entrance to the Gulf. So they're 15 miles from here or something like that in a fairly remote area. It supports a greater effort. We have the presiding officer for the Sabine pilots here, and we have the navigation district sponsor here, and it involves waterway commerce. And so if you look at the numbers, if you add Port of Beaumont and Port Arthur's tonnage areas together, we're fifth in the nation. A lot of that tonnage is derived from energy, or most of that tonnage is derived from energy. And LNG will certainly add to that. Where that comes into the process is for stability of maintaining our channel once we get it deep into 48 feet. Certainly adds to the commerce of our waterway. On a typical day, we would sit here in a 24-hour period. You'd probably see 5 or 6 tankers inbound, outbound, an equal number of bulkers, and probably about 85 tow barges moving up and down this waterway. One way or another, most of them are somehow tied to energy.
Thank you for that. I hope to visit your port one day. My time's expired. I'll now recognize Ms. Fletcher, who has been frantically scribbling over here with a lot of questions. So you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I do like to make my notes here. And I've made a lot. I can't get to all of them in 5 minutes, but I really appreciate all of your insights. And I want to follow up quickly. We are having a discussion about what the pause means, and I do think there are concerns about an indefinite pause. And we've heard that from a lot of people for a lot of the reasons that we're hearing today. But I want to make sure that everyone knows that just a couple of weeks ago, Secretary Granholm was in Houston for Sarah Week, and she talked about the pause, and she said that by this time next year, it should be in the rearview mirror. So I think it's important for us to take the opportunity that we have with this pause to solve some real and demonstrated concerns that people have raised, and that we think about how we can move forward together. And so, Mr. Beard, I want to come back to you. In your written testimony, you mentioned several issues beyond just employment numbers, but health impacts and other concerns and impacts that people in the community have experienced, where perhaps a community benefits agreement or some other kind of community engagement could potentially be useful. And I think those are the kinds of things we should be talking about now with the pause of how do we engage communities, and what are the kinds of things that we could do to address and alleviate the concerns that you've raised in this process. And so if you could talk a little bit about those issues and how maybe the community members and elected officials and others can work together in these projects and in this process to help address some of those concerns, I think that would be helpful for all of us.
Well, the first thing, going back to what was said earlier about, I think it might have been the chair, mentioned traveling through Louisiana and seeing all of those facilities and seeing the effect of that. But I wonder, did he take a moment to stop in those communities and ask about the health effects of those people there that live in Mossville, and they live in other communities that are near there, that are suffering from the pollution of industries that are already there. They're inland 50 miles. There are no LNGs there. So they're not affected by LNG, but they're affected by the pollution coming from Sasol and some of the larger facilities that have been built there. With regard to what programs happen, we got to go back to the beginning. Starts at the point of extraction out in West Texas in the Permian, where the ancestral and tribal lands of many native peoples is being used, and even those American citizens and people like ourselves whose lands are being taken from them through eminent domain, simply to satisfy this need for oil. You talked about the fact earlier even of these facilities, but there are 25 facilities, some in some form of construction, some are in permitting, but all of them are going forward. Yet we already have at least 8 to 11 of those facilities already built. So where this pause would affect the export and shipment of gas already, with more coming online, which is said to be almost double, if not triple, by 2027, how are we hurting the country or hurting our friends if we're able to export more oil and gas just the same? Makes no sense. Keystone Pipeline that you mentioned, that's just one of 4 that was affected. The others are still terminating right here in Nederland, Texas, just down the way. So we have to have agreements that start from the beginning at the extraction all the way to communities like Port Arthur, that it's in the 95th percentile in terms of air quality. What that means is this: that only 5% of cities in the country have worse air than we do. And that air has some of the largest emitters of benzene and other toxins than virtually any place in the country. That's the price we pay. So when you go through these communities, you have to understand and know what they've been suffering for decades, but yet America still depends on and talks about the national interest. Well, Texas likes to talk about, as you know, Congressman, we're seceding from the Union. We haven't done that yet, but we're part of that Union, and we're part of Texas. And that suffering continues, and those things have to be considered, those impacts, as well as the community impacts, as well as the lack of jobs. How many of those people that are coming out of your programs at Lamar State College are actually being hired? Who's tracking that? Who's tracking tax abatement, Mayor, to make sure that tax abatement is actually putting those people to work? I want to go back to what, and I'll stop, what President Reagan said. We trust, but we want to verify. Where's the verification? How do we know they're actually putting those people to work? And what jobs are they working in? That's critical. We have to do the full measure of making sure that we get the benefits if you're going to have the pain and suffering inflicted by the pollution and all that's happening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beard, and it sounds to me like some of the things that you're talking about, as you said, are beyond the scope of LNG and involve other industries and certainly existing facilities, but it does seem like this is an opportunity in this process to talk about how we can identify the potential risks and try to work those into agreements going forward, and also continue to address them through other measures that the administration is undertaking at EPA and elsewhere. And so,
Well, let me speak to that.
well, I've gone over my time, I'm sorry to say. I hope one of my colleagues will give you an opportunity to answer the question, but I have to yield back to Chairman Duncan. Thank you.
Everybody's time expired. I now recognize Mr. Burke for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If Secretary Granholm can see now that the pause should be in the rearview mirror by this time next year, one would suspect that Secretary Granholm, as the Department of Energy, recognizes, I would submit, that should be in the rearview mirror now. That's the position I believe. I think that she's right. It should be in the rearview mirror, whether it be now or next year, but the sooner the better, because of the job impacts. Mr. Kelly, you said that most of your business is tied to energy. Most of those floats going up and down, as we've seen a couple of them go by while we've been sitting here, are tied to energy. But you have other things that come into the port as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'm very proud to talk about that. I will not take up all your time, but
Maybe just 30
real
seconds.
quick. If you know and enjoy things like Viva, Sherman, Bounty, Continental, we have an import that ultimately becomes Kleenex and paper towels, and it puts a lot of people to work. We also handle, probably for the state, a third of the fence pickets around here. If you have a wooden privacy fence around your house, aluminum that goes in the manufacturing door, window frames. We estimate that we handle enough forest products to build about 15,000 homes in Texas last year over in Louisiana. And then I mentioned we handle an export commodity of wood pellets. It's a substitute for coal. Goes to the UK. And
I do wood pellets too.
yeah, you don't.
I got
hard
my
in your drill though. I'll tell you.
No, I'm saying I got them in my district. We
Oh, do you?
we
Okay.
produce
So you
wood pellets.
totally understand that component. All this creates jobs, trucking jobs, logistics jobs, longshore jobs here in our community. And then we also export craft linerboard.
So here's where I'm going with this. Because of the energy component, the chemical component, you're able to have a thriving port. That helps all these other industries too, yes or no?
We're all interdependent, and it applies to workforce development and everything else.
And so, whatever you're doing there helps these other industries grow. If we want new industries to come in, and that's a decision that y'all have to make. I can't make that decision for you, but you still need to have that vibrant port. Isn't that true, yes or no? And I want to do yes or no so I can get through that.
Yes, sir.
And And that board's important. We talk about coal, now most of my coal currently runs on Norfolk Southern, but in the north of my district and in the south of my district, the coal runs on CSX, which comes out of Port of Baltimore. Norfolk Southern goes to the Port of Virginia. Port of Baltimore's out of commission. Are y'all able, it's not gonna be feasible to truck the coal down here and ship it out, but is it feasible for you all to pick up some of the Port of Baltimore's slack while they're having a hard time?
So the reality, it's like a large body, and it's a finger that's been cut off of our nation, and those flows move into other areas. And we've certainly experienced that. There was a vessel that's behind the bridge, essentially, that was canceled, and it'll be resubmitted by another vessel through here. And we have seen, I mentioned the eucalyptus pulp. It's been redistributed, probably maybe even down to Charleston or some other ports, Jacksonville, on that, maybe as far as east as Mobile. And you touched on something, sir, that's absolutely correct. It's the inland movement of the freight that really adds the cost. And having CSX or Norfolk Southern for us, we're now served by the CPKC, which was originally KCS. All very true.
Yeah. And so when you put a pause on expanding the opportunities here in a particular area, it has a ripple effect. It could even affect the deepening of the ports. I think somebody else mentioned the channels.
Without a doubt, sir, just like the hurricane impacts that we may have, it'll ripple through the various ports and disrupts the economic cycle. The other big that we provide for is military service, and we're certainly an important and relevant, but Beaumont, Port Arthur, to the movement of military goods. All those have effects. It's a system. It's a system of systems. It may not be complex, but it is complicated. and so we certainly serve as one part of that.
All right. I appreciate it very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Chairman yields back. I'll now give it to Mr. Weber for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk about something that we discussed later, where the great colleges, as they get scholarships and they're teaching students how to have a living wage and come out to their jobs, and then they think we're more than they will. Yeah, but a lot of these constructions come and they bring their own people with them, and so they go on to the next job and they take their people with them. And I know this is maybe a little bit small, pinpointed example, but my beautiful bride grew up in Nederland, Texas. Mr. Beer, when I tell people that, they say, she's a bulldog. And I said, you know her. And so her dad worked there. Actually went through LNG. I mean, Dr. Nardi and I talked about that. I graduated in 54, I think. So they were from here. Well, he took a job over in Texas City, okay? They moved to Texas City, and that was the greatest thing that could have happened to this old country boy right here, because I met her out in junior college in 1974. So people can take their skills and they can move. It's a good thing that we're teaching skills. It gives people options. I want to make good observations. Now I'm going to go over to the Sabine Neches Waterway. Our Great Sabine Neches Navigation District is here. We appreciate their help. We're talking about dredging out the waterway, Mr. Kelly, as you know, working on that project for a while. And so what y'all need to know is all of the funds and the money that has been provided from industry here that has gone into the Southeast Texas. But actually, Sabine Neches Navigation District has been able to up their local sponsor amount. Normally, the federal government is looking to clean out waterways and stuff. And by the way, Sabine Neches Waterway is the second largest waterway in the Gulf of Mexico, second only to the Mississippi River. And so Mr. Kelly's right, we do more military personnel and equipment out than any other country, any other port in the country for that matter. But what has happened here is that they've increased their local share sponsorship to 40% to encourage the federal government to go ahead and dredge out Sabine Neches Waterway. So we're working on that, and it's important, very, very important, because of all of the commerce it does. And so any pause in the commerce, and even though you think about, well, Secretary Granholm said that, this time next year, the pause will be over, I guess she's pushing that theory. We don't know that for a fact. But here's the fact. The pause will cause some consternation on industries and people who are looking for jobs and doing things. That's just a fact. People like certainty. Companies like certainty even better. It's what makes them roll. So I want to get that out of the way. Mr. Chairman, I want to come back to you on our Great Nature's waterways. In your testimony, you highlight that Texas leads the way in wind and solar, and also that, for those of you who may or may not know, this community boasts the largest carbon capture sequestration storage facility in the country, maybe in the world for that matter. And I'll give President Obama credit because under his leadership, that was one of the projects that was done under the AIR, American Reinvestment Recovery Act, in 2010, I think they opened up. I'm going way back now. So this is not necessarily about dinging administrations, because I think we all work together. Now, all that to say that we move out a lot of, I think, wind projects, windmills. Talk to us, Mr. Kelly, if you will, about exactly what kind of other cargo y'all move out.
Yes, sir, and I'll tell you, I'll speak broad a little bit about the Texas Gulf Coast, because everybody brings a little something different to the table, and you've heard, sir, that if you've been to one port, you've seen one port, and we all do a little bit different, but some along the Gulf Coast, I know Galveston and Freeport and Corpus and Brownsville all have a lot of wind energy components. Most of those are brought in from overseas, and Texas, as I mentioned earlier, is the leader in energy production by wind. Most of that's all up in the Panhandle. And if you've made that long drive to Lubbock or somewhere like that, you have an hour to stare at them. As you may feel like you're not going very fast. That's where a lot of those components are going. They're also going up into Colorado, Kansas, and then there's another segment up towards Iowa and even Wisconsin and parts of Illinois where wind energy components move through. And that's the project component, where we handle a lot of heavy, big, wide things that help make the industry go. They'll handle project components for things like wind energy construction.
Well, thank you, and I want to simply say that I appreciate all of y'all being here, and this is the great Southeast Texas. For my colleagues, I call this, the folks that live and work and play here, the salt of the earth, and I've got 7 seconds left, so Mr. Chairman, if I can keep it going for another 2 or 3 seconds, I will yield back, and by golly, I do.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gentlemen's time's expired. Let's take the opportunity to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. Members may have additional written questions for you, and I'll remind members they have 10 business days to submit additional questions for the record. I ask that witnesses do their best to submit responses within 10 business days upon receipt of the questions. I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record the documents included on the staff hearing documents list. Without objection, that will be the order. And without objection, this committee will stand adjourned.
All right.